There's a lot of emotions thrown around by the media when they report on news stories. They're often very, very subjective and not particularly objective when it comes to actually analyzing the real performance financially of a company. And I think a lot of people invest in companies on that information, which is probably not a good idea. So, what is the actual numbers behind the electric car companies that are doing well? Well, the truth is, BYD, they're doing well. Yeah, they are. But the other truth is that the primary vehicles that BYD sell now are plug-in hybrids. And the honest truth here is that legacy automakers make a profit selling hybrids, and they have for years. It's not really that difficult. So BYD's ascension to become a profitable automaker has been on the back of its rise in sales of plug-in hybrids and of batteries and of other things, don't get me wrong. However, BYD is most certainly not an EV only company. And therefore, the question remains, which EV companies, the companies that are selling the cars of the future, are actually doing well? Which of them aren't doing well? Well, according to the numbers, the stats, here is the definitive list. There is only one car company making a profit selling EVs, but there's a few that might very soon. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. It's great to have you with us. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. This is a list of the free cash flow of pure electric car manufacturers. So the free cash flow, as in the money they have right now. And this list is quite interesting because it shows you that there's only one company with free cash flow, that is Tesla. And Tesla has $16.1 billion of free cash flow. Tesla basically has no debt. Its cash outweighs any debts it has by a pretty wide margin, which is pretty remarkable considering the fact that there is no other EV maker in the world currently making an overall profit in order to the point where they're actually cash flow positive. But there's some companies that aren't too far away, such as Workhorse. Now, when I first saw this list, I thought, Workhorse? Really? And yeah, now the truth is Workhorse are pretty close to being cash flow positive. Workhorse are actually an American electric van and truck manufacturer. So I knew very little about this company, but I've actually done a bit of research and discovered that Workhorse make electric trucks and vans, and they're doing a pretty good job of it, obviously. Now, in second place is Faraday Future. Faraday have minus $1.4 billion in free cash flow. So that puts them in second place, which is kind of insane. But the truth is that you have to weigh this against the actual numbers of vehicles that Faraday Future have delivered. And I think the number might be about 2. Yeah, not many. Next on this list is Canoe. I know what you're thinking, but wait a second. Canoe is minus $1.7 billion in free cash flow. And, well, the reality is they're now bankrupt. I warned investors, I don't know how many times. Yes, Canoe had some great products. And their electric pickup truck was probably my favorite product that never became real, but my favorite car or truck that I thought would happen that I've ever seen. Absolutely loved it. But getting to production was too hard for them, and they've gone bankrupt. And as a result, investors lost a huge amount of money. Now, I know that a lot of people think, oh, you're a YouTuber, shouldn't take you seriously. Your financial advice isn't to be respected necessarily over the advice of financial analysts. But my key question here is, who invested in Canoe? Because they're the ones who've lost that money, right? Those investors have lost that money. And I reckon that watching YouTube can benefit you, not necessarily to follow the instructions of a YouTuber, but you can still find information to help you make an informed decision. Clearly, a lot of people have lost a lot of money in some of these companies, and I'm about to list some of the companies where people have lost billions of dollars combined. Next, we have Fisker. Now, we know that Fisker are now bankrupt, but they had minus $2 billion cash flow. They're followed by Lotus with minus $2.2 billion, and then Xpeng with minus $4.4 billion. But you can see the trajectory There's only one car company on this list here with a trajectory other than Tesla, which is actually starting to head into the right direction. And XPeng actually made the lowest loss in the last 5 years over the past quarter. So I think XPeng, good chance in the fourth quarter of this year that they will actually record a profit. Let's wait and see, but I think it's very likely. Next, we have Polestar. Polestar have a minus cash flow history cumulatively of 6.8 billion. That's a fair bit. Polestar do make some really good cars, but I would say their trajectory isn't as good as what it could be, or maybe what some other manufacturers are. The sales figures aren't really increasing enough in order to kind of arrest this slide. But that said, Polestar is basically a subsidiary of Geely, and Geely is absolutely killing it. Geely, I believe, the fastest growing car company in the world this year. So Geely, can kind of cover those losses. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Next, we have VinFast with $7.8 billion of free cash flow in the negative. So yeah, I mean that's pretty nasty looking. Now, VinFast have made a few interesting decisions. They invested in a huge amount of money in Australia. They're going to build a factory here and do all kinds of things in Australia. They actually have employees. I met one of their employees at a BMX race. And then the company ended up cancelling its situation in Australia. It sold off an enormous racetrack that it had purchased, and it left the country. Then it decided it would build cars in the United States. Well, so far, VinFast not doing too well. Sales figures are low. The truth is, reviews from journalists and from automotive industry analysts have been pretty scathing. The cars just aren't good enough to compete, and I don't see VinFast going anywhere. I actually think eventually the company will cease to exist. That's the most likely scenario, but I could be wrong. Next, we have NIO. As you can see, NIO's free cash flow is in the negative, even more than these other companies in the list, and it's more than double that of XPeng. XPeng 4.4, NIO 10.7. And NIO's losses seem to be building. They're not getting any smaller, but they do make some good cars. Next is Lucid. Lucid, they are minus 12.4. And their car sales aren't growing very fast, but Lucid have the very, very luxurious position of having majority ownership of the company be, well, in Saudi Arabia. The foreign investment company of Saudi Arabia, which is basically the Saudi Arabian government, has decided to Saudi Arabianize Lucid. So they are really an Arabian company or a Middle Eastern company, whatever you want to call it. Ford's electric car division, this is not Ford themselves, this is just their electric car division, is minus 12.7 billion. But as you can see, all the way down the bottom is Rivian at minus 22.4 billion. Which of these companies is the most likely to go bankrupt? Next, you have, of course, Canoo and Fisker that have already gone bankrupt. Well, if you look at these numbers here and consider the fact that Rivian sales this year haven't gone up, you've got to say Rivian are a legitimate chance that they will run out of cash. It is very possible. But getting away from all the negatives there, guys, these companies, some of them I think will be successful. I reckon the one standout here is XPeng. If you look at the numbers and XPeng's current sales, they are obviously beating NIO in sales, and they have the position where they're not losing anywhere near as much money. In fact, they're losing 1/10 of the money that NIO is per quarter on average currently. So I think it's fair to say that XPeng are the most likely company out of this list to succeed. Could Ford succeed? Well, obviously Ford as an overall company, they have a fair bit of cash on hand and a fair bit of debt. I'll get to that in a separate video. I think this really makes the point here of just how well Tesla has done. It kind of cuts away from some of the noise we're hearing, hundreds of news articles on a daily basis that most of them are trashing Tesla. But ultimately, it shows you that Tesla is an incredible success story. Hopefully, more of these companies below on this list can join them soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Bye-bye.